Well, the Canadian government is soliciting the opinions of Canadians on how to institute a national action plan on combating hate. But they worked diligently to exclude and suppress feedback from those who did not believe that combating hate should be a national priority. That is, until they realized that their communications might be exposed. Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini, bringing you an access to information request that highlights, once again, the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy. And from what I can tell, some of the most hypocritical to date are the virtue-signaling, inclusivity-touting Justin Trudeau Liberals.
I mean, when Erin O'Toole talks about, oh yes, we need to unite people, we need to bring people together, he's talking about defending the rights of people who are anti-vax, to endanger my kids and endanger us all of future lockdowns and risk all of us having a slower recovery. If you make a choice, a personal choice, to not get vaccinated, then I will have no sympathy for you when you come to me and said, oh, but I can't go out to a restaurant with my friends, or I'm not being allowed to go to the gym, or my employer is telling me I have to continue to work from home.
This work that I am about to show you in this report was made possible through all of your generous donations at rebelinvestigates.com. At that special website, you can view all of our exclusive reports and, of course, chip in, if you're able to fund our journalistic efforts directly. All right, so this particular access to information request is in regards to a questionnaire developed by Canadian Heritage, which evidently operates in conjunction with its portfolio organizations and plays a vital role in the cultural, civic, and economic life of Canadians. The questionnaire was unveiled alongside the first ever National Action Plan on Combating Hate that was launched at the end of March of this year. It outlined that Canadians could be part of the National Action Plan on Combating Hate because the development of a National Action Plan apparently aims to deliver tangible change. The questionnaire encouraged every person in Canada to participate, but there were claims at the time that on social media that unless you were in the group that was recognized as those with lived experiences, whatever that means, you were actually prohibited from continuing with the survey. The claim is that this will inevitably engineer the result that Canadian Heritage wants. And as evidenced by some screen grabs, this may include establishing a National Victims of Hate program, funding anti-hate education, and increasing media representation for communities affected by hate. So now that we know some of the questionnaires' suggestions, and that they were actually objectives that have been instituted, and I'll show you that later on in this report, let us first dive into the response from this access to information request itself that shows full-on exclusion of a vast majority of Canadian respondents. On page 17, Canadian Heritage Executive Director Peter Fledgell sends out a link to this questionnaire on March 28th. Shortly after this launch, an email is put out on March 31st, where Fledgell seems excited that the questionnaire has garnered over 300 responses. Less than a week later, on April 6th, public opinion research advisor Carl McKellar appears worried that the people who don't think dealing with online hate should be a Canadian priority are giving feedback, and they want them excluded. Have a listen. We are starting to see an increase in the number of people responding to the National Action Plan on Combating Hate consultation survey that feel combating hate should not be a priority for the Government of Canada. I assume that the survey is being promoted more widely now, as our primary target audience for this survey are people that believe combating hate should be a priority for the Government of Canada. The inclusion of this other group in our data poses a problem for our analysis. If the survey is left as is, we do not have an efficient way of determining which respondents are opponents of the action plan versus those that are proponents. We will have to manually go through thousands of written responses and determine if the respondent is a proponent or an opponent of the action plan, which is very time-consuming and will impact our ability to deliver results quickly. A simple solution would be to add a question at the beginning of the survey that would easily identify these individuals in our data set. The question would be, do you think that combating hate should be a priority for the Government of Canada? Yes or no? Respondents that answer no to this question could either be directed to a new open text box to share their views or be allowed to complete the existing survey. Either way, we would have the information we need to quickly differentiate opponents from proponents. As there are still 24 days of fieldwork, I believe that it would be wise to add this question to the survey to aid our ability to deliver results efficiently. We are now receiving hundreds of responses per day, so the faster we can incorporate this change, the better. Carl McKellar. A few days later, on April 11th, McKellar again emails saying that they have received more than 2,000 responses since last night at 7 p.m. They think that 75 to 80% of these responses are from non-allies. A big chunk of the remaining 20 to 25% are from a GOC, that's the Government of Canada, IP address. And he guesses that a department promoted the questionnaire, and possibly the CRA, the Canadian Revenue Agency. Acting Director for the Policy Research Group, Mark Ambard, then refers to a tweet from the Twitter account that, again, I showed earlier, which belongs to editor and podcaster Jonathan Kay, who urges his fellow Canadians to fill out the survey. Ambard writes that they've had another 1,100 new responses and notes that Kay tweeted about a possible ATIP, access to information request, to see how many people were screened out. Well, here you are. And then, of course, their tone changed. A few hours later, McKellar makes suggestions on how to now include feedback from the same people that he wanted to exclude a few days prior. He says that there have been comments about the fact that hate is not defined. If there is a definition, he says that it should be integrated into the landing page. He then directs the department to open up some of the feedback by noting that respondents are asked if they think combating hate is a priority. Those that say no are asked why, and then their survey ends. It may be worthwhile to include the list of recommendations on the landing page so that all respondents, supporters, and non-supporters can review them if they wish. Well, that seems a bit more democratic. In spite of the fact that 75 to 80% of respondents were alleged non-allies, some of the recommendations shown from that screenshot above have already been implemented. Under funding anti-hate education, well, we know that the government-funded Canadian Anti-Hate Network has already implemented a toolkit that is to be disseminated throughout Canadian schools titled Confronting and Preventing Hate in Canadian Schools. They received a $268,000 grant from the government to basically just copy and paste the Confronting White Nationalism in Schools toolkit out of the United States. And our Canadian Radio Television Corporation, also called the CRTC, has mandated that our Canadian state broadcaster, the CBC, enhance diversity in its programming by requiring them to spend a certain amount of money on programs produced by people with disabilities, Indigenous, the LGBTQ community, and racialized people as a stipulation of their licensing renewal. Finally, as per Fledgel on April 14th, he says that there has been a dramatic spike in trolls targeting the questionnaire, which means that the results at this stage have limited value. PRG, that's the Policy Resource Group, subsect of Canadian Heritage, is cleaning the data in real time. And as it comes in, they will be submitting the final results after the questionnaire closes in May. At the time, approximately 5,000 people have answered the questionnaire. So it looks like to me that Canadian Heritage basically gathered the opinions of people who agree with their predetermined conclusion and are bundling it up into a nice little package and calling it research, while very likely instituting recommendations in real time based on that same research. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. We have a special portal that houses exclusive investigations such as this access to information request that I brought you today, and all of it can be found at rebelinvestigates.com. Thanks to your generous donations at that same website, I can continue to engage in these kinds of reports, and I can also gauge how much you're interested in the reports that I bring to you. So if you'd like to facilitate this work and support me in these efforts, as well as contribute to the larger Rebel platform, you can do so at rebelinvestigates.com.